I first discovered Napalm Death probably July, August 1985 at a local pub, the Mermaid on the Stratford Road. I'd heard about the hardcore concerts that were taking place there on Fridays and Saturdays. So I took a visit up there one day, and Napalm Death were supporting some other artists. Liked very much what I saw a flyer that they were playing the following week. I think there was like an instant attraction to Napalm sound. It's different to what they're doing now, and certainly different to what they were doing when I joined and started collaborating in the writing of the material. They were a three-piece outfit: drums, bass, guitar, bass player, singing as well, and that comprised of Justin Broderick guitar, Nick Bullen bass vocals, and Ant Miles, also known as Rat, on drums. They had a more hardcore, anarcho-crass style sound with influences from Chaos UK, Disorder, Amoebics, Crass, Joy Division, certain bass lines, even certain beats. Very Joy Division influenced, I would say so, definitely. Nick very much likes his Joy Division. It was purely a passion for music, wanting to get behind the kit and play with some like-minded individuals that wanted to play heavy, extreme music, and I think me, Justin and Nick all shared that concept. Nick was a lyricist, and I guess he took his lyrics from various political points, social points.
Yeah, I mean, Napalm Death's political lyrics were like pretty entwined with the band. It's a bit of a throwback to their prehistory before Scum, you know, coming from the anarcho-punk scene. Napalm Death's vocal style was unique and pretty groundbreaking. That goes without saying, really. If you follow the independent music scene before Scum, it was the grindcore growl that Nick Bullen sort of invented, and it was kind of a follow-on from the hardcore punk bands that predated them, but it was much more extreme. It was it came to define grindcore, you know, that vocal style, and they pretty much encapsulated it on that album.
I mean, you know, the fact that their music, their lyrics are actually about something was kind of like a breath of fresh air at the time, you know, because there's nothing wrong with the standard metal lyrical concepts of singing about either Dungeons and Dragons or horror or war, all those things. There's a place for that, but with Napalm the songs were about real things, about real lives, and about real political ideas, and all.
I'm an artist who works a lot with text, and one of the things that helped me think about the way text is used or the way language is used was the kind of vocal style that Napalm Death developed, and particularly that you hear kind of developing through the course of the record Scum. At a certain point, language ceases to function, like it ceases to be able to communicate in a normal kind of way. Like when you have kind of a whole group of kind of messages which are kind of competing against each other and a kind of almost interchangeable kind of set of systems of beliefs, that kind of saying something in its own right doesn't really actually affect any change. And I think I was really interested in this kind of passage in Napalm Death and the use of the vocals from meaning in a normal kind of sense to something which was kind of a lot deeper and basically more primal. Like it was a way of using language to express something kind of like emotional and political, but doing by stepping outside of the normal kind of rules.
Basically, me and Justin became friends, I'd say, around about November of that year, November 85. We were both drinking at a local pub, the Barrel Organ, and which was a sort of indie, punk, psychobilly hangout on weekends. He just come to me the one night and just told me that they're having problems with the drummer. I asked why, what the problems were. He said, they wanted to get a bit more metallic influences in the band, possibly play faster. He knew that I like to play the drums fairly fast. I was playing in a local hardcore band called Anorexia, and he asked what I thought about joining, to which I said yes please, I'd love to try out for that, which I did. Me and Justin rehearsed in my bedroom at home, my parents' house, while my mother was at work, and after several rehearsals I had the songs down. After hearing these songs enough times from seeing them at the Mermaid on endless occasions, sort of half knew the songs anyway, so to get behind the drums and play them and just add a little bit more heaviness, faster, it worked out. This is where I fucking grew up. This is where me and Justin rehearsed. My first ever rehearsals took place in this house, so with Napalm.
Okay.
If you want to come and have a little look while the folks are out, not a problem.
Cool.
Slightly different decor. No posters anymore. The place used to be full of posters, but this was it. This was the room. Quite a good view actually of Kings Norton and South Birmingham, Licky Hills, Franklin Beaches, but yeah, somewhere in here. I think the bed was there, the little Premier jazz drum kit, little amplifier, stereo system, records, posters, top to bottom, and yeah, it's where we did it. So we had our first few rehearsals until we actually got together as a three-piece, me, Nick and Justin, to do it as a band. This is where we did it as a pair, just for me to learn the songs, everything that I've been hearing while watching them at the Mermaid. Then we got together as a complete outfit, me, Justin and Nick, in an actual rehearsal room. I would have thought that happened around January of 1986. About 3 weeks prior to my first concert with Napalm Death, which was the 18th of January 1986 at the Mermaid, supporting Amoebics. Quite a big audience, quite a big band to support. Maybe I was nervous, maybe not, can't remember. Just remember we did it. It went down really well with the audience. It was a new, refreshed, I think, Napalm Death, faster, heavier, and that was it, no turning back. Back in the early days, let's say in 86, we were doing the odd gig here and there, Sheffield, Mansfield, Nottingham, Birmingham. We were the resident Mermaid act, as I mentioned earlier. So no, there were no tours then. Daz Russell, the local promoter, who used to put all the hardcore gigs on, all the punk and hardcore gigs, he'd have his little chair or stool, whatever there, his table for collecting, maybe some fanzines, some demos to sell from bands. Up the stairs, turn to the left, and you had the function room, which had a very small stage, half a foot. The place held about 400 people, and on some of the hardcore matinees, as they used to be called, on a Saturday, it'd start at midday and wouldn't finish till 11, and he'd cram anything up to 20, 24 artists, from Chaos UK to Amoebics, Antisect, Conflict, and Napalm were lucky that we got to play with some of those bigger bands that we probably used to watch as kids, and down the road at Digby Civic Hall. So yeah, this is the venue.
What was the atmosphere like in there when you guys were playing back in the day?
Always a good buzz, friendly people, a lot of people drinking local scrumpy, a lot of the crusts, the hardcores, they'd come with their little tubs, including Nick, who enjoyed a good tot or two. It was friendly in there, never no fighting, never a bad atmosphere. The Mermaid was run by an Asian family, and I think their policy was, you respect us and we'll respect you. Never saw a fight in there. There never was any fighting. People come to hear music, to get up, have a pogo, have a mosh, just listen to some good music basically. It was just a good, friendly meeting place where you could get on stage and do your thing, and we certainly did that on more than probably 100 occasions. So we'll go in and I'd stopped coming here probably 87, early 87, as I was getting the new Napalm together with new members and starting to rehearse for the B-side of Scum. Yeah, that's it. Gone, boarded up. So no, there were no tours then. So Justin left October of 86, Nick left March of 87, Lee joined, Bill joined, and Jimmy Whiteley joined, which that became the B-side of Scum, which we recorded in April of 1987. Ritch Bitch Studios, Ali, where we recorded the A and the B-side of Scum, first Napalm Death album. Still got the smell that I remember. I haven't been here since probably 1988. So no, nothing's changed. Reception, snack bar, rehearsal rooms, studio upstairs, dance studio. No, that's changed at all. Definitely changed. They've got a lot more stuff in here. A couple of leather settees, but it has moved around. But yeah, we used to come in here just so we could play loud with live.
The session engineer was a fella called Mike Ivory, who's obviously moved on since. And I was his apprentice. I was coming in nights after college, in between day jobs, and just literally sitting through night after night of complete sessions, because that's what he did. He did nighttime sessions.
They were the cheaper sessions.
So like from whatever it was, from 6 o'clock in the evening till about 4 in the morning, we'd come in and do a session, and it'd be half an album later, or in your case, a whole album later, probably.
Yeah.
That's how it used to go back then.
Well, I've known Napalm Death since pretty much as they started. I mean, when they were really young, and they're like teens, you know. The incarnation of the band before they even made Scum, probably 2 years before they made Scum. I actually promoted a show in Nottingham, and Napalm Death are one of my favourite bands, and I got them to play along with it was a who's who of all the hardcore punk bands at the time: Subhumans, Amoebics, Disorder, Chaos UK, and opening the show was Napalm Death. So I've sort of kept tabs with them, Nick and Justin, prior to them recording the A-side of Scum, and it seemed natural that I'd obviously see them when they got more and more famous in their own local area, and I think they felt at ease with me, and I felt at ease with them. When it became time for them to actually make a record, even though they recorded the actual A-side of the album and couldn't get a record label to put it out, and I hadn't quite started my label, as soon as I had started my label, it was like the most natural thing that Earache would be the one to release it, because I knew them for years.
They've influenced thousands of bands. You can hear the influence of what they do in so much music that's around now. But I don't think anybody, maybe only a couple of bands spring to mind that have ever really captured the energy and the aggression of the early Napalm Death stuff. You can listen to Scum now, it's still 20 years old, and it still sounds fucking brutal. It still sounds like it's still quite a terrifying record. It's got a very bleak sound to it. And although it's like with the early black metal stuff, it sounds as bad as it does production-wise, not because people wanted it to sound like that, but because they were doing it on a budget of 20p. And Scum was recorded incredibly cheaply as well, and you can tell, but that's given it a kind of magical feel to it. It's got a really bleak and brutal sound, and it's quite sparse. There's a lot of space, even when they're blasting away. It's almost like a wash of sound, rather than like the stuff today where it's all triggered drums and overproduced and polished sound. It's got a rawness that I guess comes from the punk scene, from the Discharge and GBH influences, and you add that to the death metal side of things, and it's something quite unique. I don't think anyone's ever come close to reproducing that sound, really.
Justin, I think, was hoping for a little bit more activity with Napalm after recording this, what became the A-side of Scum. and a label didn't come forward straight away like we'd hoped. As I said, Core Records showed some interest, so did Pussmort Records in America. It sort of fell apart. Justin was looking for a band that was going to tour, was going to get some press, was going to do something. He didn't just want to be this Mermaid band that just played the Mermaid, and just became a demo band. Nothing happened. He was looking for... Success isn't really the right word, but just... He wanted to get out there and do something. He had a hunger, and he got the offer to play moving from guitar to drums for a local band called Heather David, who signed to Blast First Records, got produced by Steve Albini from Big Black, who came over to produce that particular record. Heather David had been around since early mid 80s, different lineup, slightly different sound, and just one thing led to another. They were coming and watching Napalm. They loved the Napalm sound, and if you have a look at the credits for the A-side of Scum, it's actually got Heather David down as production. I wouldn't really say that they produced, but they were there. There was a lot of people there. They were there, and maybe they voiced their opinion. This up or that down, blah blah blah, and we were just good friends basically. We liked Heather David's sound, and they really liked the Napalm sound. They come along to the recording session, and Justin ended up playing drums for Heather David. He left.
Nick Bullen and Justin Broderick drove the band in their very, very formative stages when they were not really a band, more a collective. Mick Harris came out on drums as the third member of the band, and it was those three who recorded Side A. Then Justin got offered a job with Heather David, and he was a big fan of Heather David and decided, I'd rather go and join them and play drums than carry on with this project. Nick Bullen got fed up and bored without Justin and felt that the music anyway was starting to drift in a different direction, more towards, shall we say, metal. So it's left to Mick Harris, the drummer and the last member of the band to join from Side A, to carry the whole thing on. I wondered at this day why he did it, and I suspect the reason was momentum. Mick actually saw a potential in what Napalm Death were doing and really drove it forward. And give the guy credit, drummers are normally regarded as people who drive behind a kit but have no driving mentality to take things forward with the band. But I think he had a vision, and that vision became Scum, and then from Enslavement to Obliteration, which are two of the most important albums of the late 80s in British music. I think it's also worth pointing out that the thrash scene at the time across the world was massive. But Britain had no credibility in the thrash scene, strangely. What we did have, though, was a band taking things a little further from a much more DIY direction, i.e. Napalm, and what they did. And sometimes people forget, when they talk about the importance and influence of British metal in the mid to late 80s, that Napalm Death was there, and changing history, turning it on its head.
That was October 86, so that left me and Nick. Found a guitarist, a local friend, Frank Healy, Cerebral Fix, Sacrilege, Benediction, still playing in Benediction, real nice guy. Didn't quite work out with Frank. It's a shame that he never made it to record the B-side of Scum. I can't really remember why he went, why he left. It didn't work. His style, he just didn't cut it for what I had written and the way Napalm was going. I think, can't say he struggled, but he had his style of playing, and it just didn't work. He did several gigs, it didn't work. Jimmy had come in on bass after Nick departing.
Why did Nick leave?
Nick's head just wasn't there. Nick was at university spending all his money on alcohol. I have to be honest here, and he was turning up to rehearsals extremely drunk and really falling about the floor. He just wasn't interested, and as much as I got to be honest in saying it, this is what happened. I had to approach him the one day at one rehearsal where there was me there, Nick was there, just vocals then. We were just having Nick on vocals because Jim had joined on bass and Frank on guitar. And I remember having to say to Nick, look, you just don't seem to be into this no more. You're turning up really drunk, late. You know, do you want to do it or not? And I remember he just walked out of rehearsal. That's the last I saw of Nick until he joined Scorn. And The lineup for the B-side, as you know, it was splintered. We had Bill Steer in Liverpool, the Wirral. We had Lee in Coventry, and the two nearest from Kings and Autumn would have been me and Jim. So even though we all knew each other and it all worked well, we only got together to record the B-side. We got together for one rehearsal, which was the evening prior to going into the studio. All of Napalm's rehearsals came from probably the gigging. That's how it got tight.
They rehearsed at the Mermaid.
Yes, to be honest. I went to Bill's in Liverpool, the Wirral. Bill had only just left school, was about to start university, and his parents were a little bit reluctant to Bill coming to Birmingham by himself, and he said, well, Mick, yes, I'd love to join Napalm, but could you come to Liverpool to rehearse? My parents don't want me to come into Birmingham. So I said, that's not a problem. So I trundled down to Liverpool with my little book of songs that I'd written. Bill living in quite a big house, got his own floor in this house with his own rehearsal room, because he'd already got Carcass. So he'd got the drums in there, bass amp, guitar amp. So just me and Bill jammed for 2 separate days to get these songs as tight as we possibly could. Still own the tape recording from those sessions. Bill was just a natural. He was tight. I loved his tone. As I say, it was a dirtier tone because of the down tuning. It just worked. It was perfect. He had it down. He then came to Birmingham to have this one rehearsal, probably about 2 weeks later, after me and him meeting up and jamming at his place, he came and the four of us got together. And even Lee didn't practice the lyrics on the eve of the recording, because it was still being worked. Well, where do I put the lyrics? Lee was cued in on the B-side of Scum. Lee was cued in to every song. Now, every song he was cued in, and I shared some vocals as well on that, on that recording. And again, it was an evening session. That's the sound that we got from that session. Both recorded very quickly, very cheaply. Both recorded in 8-hour evening sessions and mixed in those in 8 hours.
What, both sides?
Both sides. 16 hours. 16 hours in total. So the A side was, what you'd get was an evening special rate, and that was recording at night from 8 o'clock at night. Sorry, they were 12-hour sessions. No, they were 8-hour sessions, sorry. Starting at midnight till 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. in the morning, and you got a reduced rate if you came in. So that's how the sessions work. So I believe it was £120 for each recording, and we just went in, mic'd up, got the best sound that we could, headphones on, 1, 2, 3, 4, tape rolling, put it down. So it was always live mic'd. We used the 8-track recording for both the A and the B side of Scum, as I mentioned, with an engineer that was good at separation as far as we was concerned. He dealt with punk bands, thrash bands. We chose Ritch Bitch because Sacrilege had recorded there, who were a Birmingham band, a Midlands band, on a different label to Napalm, but they had a very heavy guitar sound. I think Justin wanted definitely a heavy guitar sound for the A side, and he even borrowed Damien, the guitarist of Sacrilege's MXR original distortion pedal. It had a specific tone to it. I can't even think what distortion pedal Justin owned prior to going into the studio, but for him the MXR was the pedal that he wanted. And I'll be honest, I would say the guitar tone on the A side of Scum is definitely better than the tone on the B side, but as I mentioned earlier, 2 different recordings, 2 different guitarings. The A side, I don't know too much about tunings of guitars, but let's say the A side is normal, what we'd call concert pitch. If that's the right term. The B side with Bill Steer, and the way Bill Steer tuned his guitar, Bill tuned his guitar 2 below concert pitch. Strings a lot looser, heavier gauge strings. heavier tone bass, a dirtier tone. That was Bill's sound. He had this heavier, and I didn't ask for this, even though I'd written all of the B-side songs and presented Bill with my form of tablature, the way I had written these songs. Bill had a totally different tone to Justin. It was heavier, but we didn't quite get the cleanness with the B-side. It's a real muffled, dirty recording, the B-side is for Scum. Two totally different recordings. Same engineer, same studio, same 8-track, same drums, same everything pretty much, same backline. Just two different sessions, two different lineups, and we got a dirtier sound on a much dirtier sound on the B-side. It wasn't intentional, it's just that's the sound that we got from that session. Both recorded very quickly, very cheaply, both recorded in 8-hour evening sessions.
I think if you wanted to really differentiate between sides A and B, and I don't think it's fair to do so because there was a cohesion, side A is definitely more punk, side B is definitely more metal, and it's one of the reasons why the likes of Nick Bullen, who founded the band, left before side B was recorded, because they were moving towards a more metal direction. So if you want to take a cut-off, yes, side A is definitely much more from the anarcho-punk roots. Side B was moving much more into metal and getting influenced by a lot of what was going on in the really underground scene at the time. However, I don't think it's fair to split them like that. I think they're part of a cohesive work. And one of the fascinating things is it does actually come across so well, spanning between the two. You don't put side A on and hear something radically different to side B. Side A continued into side B, and it was a natural evolution.
I didn't grow up with metal. Nick didn't, Justin didn't. We all come from a punk background. Nick and Justin also came from an early extreme noise, para-electronics background. We're talking Whitehouse, Ramley, Nursery Wound. So, no, that the metal influence came later, I guess. Justin, as I say, Justin wanted more of a metallic influence. He was getting into, let's say, the thrash side of metal. Your Slayer, Creator, Sodom, Bathory, Possessed. It was Justin that turned me on to metal. Not Nick, not anybody else. Justin introduced me to thrash and death metal. Prior to that, maybe I'd heard at school some Motorhead records with, kids in my school were either rockers or mods. I was the only punk there. I was the only kid listening to alternative music, that being John Peel, indie, alternative, whatever you call it, and hardcore and punk. So the three of us did not grow up with rock. So if anything, it was the last part of NAPALM, really, the metal, if you want to call it. It was hardcore, but the crossover was coming from the extreme thrash bands with the hardcore, with the extreme side of hardcore. So that crossover was there, and that really started to come towards the end of 85 and 86, definitely. So we all grew up with alternative music, basically, but we all shared a passion for the extreme side of all of those musics, all those different categories. I guess living in an industrial city, maybe it did have some sort of influence, some impact, just a way of escaping, basically. The rat race, everything around you, just getting together with some friends and creating this energy, forget everything else around you.
I think any scene is a partly coincidental, partly social, partly spiritual. It's a whole combination of factors which lead to a scene coming out of a specific city. Birmingham had always had the tradition of being a metal city, and still does to this day. And I think the fact that it came from that area, and it's more Coventry than Birmingham, to be fair, but the fact is that there was a genuine punk scene up there, an anarcho-punk scene, crusty punk scene, if you will, from which Napalm Death grew. There was an exchange of ideas, exchange of tapes, a lot of DIY attitude that was going on very much at the grassroots in that city. Why it happened there? Probably because people were bored and fed up and were looking for something a little different, and they found a way forward. But Napalm Death, I don't think, started out as anything other than just a project to keep people from being bored. And here we are 20 years later talking about that project in the most glorious and wonderful terms. Quite remarkable.
But Napalm, from the release of the first record, Scum, things definitely started to take off. I don't think Earache half expected it. the response that they got. They only pressed X amount. I believe Digby printed 1,500 or 3,000 of Scum. And
how many did it sell eventually?
It still sells. That's a figure that I'll never know, and I don't think anybody will ever know, to be quite honest. A rough figure, it's got to be over 100,000 for sure. And
really?
Don't forget, it's had endless reissues. There's all the different vinyl editions, different CD editions. It's never been tampered with as far as remastered, etc., etc., new artwork. Nothing like that's ever been tampered with.
Is
Thank
that
God.
something you'd like to do? Or?
No. That is the sound, and I believe any recording that's been released. I've never been into this remastered, etc., etc. I see absolutely no point in it. Yes, nowadays you can, as far as remastering goes, boost frequencies, boost the overall volume, let's call it. I see no point in that whatsoever. That's the recording that was caught then and how it was mastered then. Why change anything? Yeah, there's a couple on the A side of Scum. You've got You Suffer, which was meant to be the shortest song ever recorded. It's like a second and a half. Then you got The Kill, which is about 12 seconds. Then Life is the first track on the B-side.
Right.
So the B-side, I believe, how many songs on the B-side? It's about 16, I think, on the B-side of Scum. Let's have a look. Wait,
Sorry,
it's okay. 16. Okay, so I guess to keep within a time frame, and especially pressing to vinyl, the A side is certainly a lot longer than the B side. Just as I said, they were a lot shorter, a lot more minimal structured songs on the B side, just the way I was writing this material. So
was it a conscious decision though to make really, really short tracks, shorter than anyone else?
yes, not shorter than anybody else, but it was a conscious decision that we want to make these short, fast, extreme songs, condense, just squeeze it in and play it as quick as possible, and just break it all down. You know, we don't need the solos or anything, or the verse chorus bridge gap, verse chorus end. It was just get as much as you could and just break it down and just compact it and
So kick ass and
do it quickly as fast as possible.
I suppose it's very simple, but it's very simple in the way it's very brutal. Like, I think one thing that is kind of amazing is there's not like long guitar breaks or twin guitar leads or anything like that, and they don't need to be in there. That's the good thing about it. It's kind of reduced down to its bare components, and I think even you get with some of the longer songs on there, which are probably 2.5 minutes long, they actually do something really weird with time, because they actually seem pretty epic. They kind of, it doesn't feel like a really short song, which it would seem like anywhere else, and I think they do something really odd with time on that record. They sort of, everything becomes really compressed, and because you have these kind of lurches in speed, there's these sort of incredibly sort of fast sort of passages, and then kind of basically stuff slowed right down, and then that kind of, I think that does something really interesting. It doesn't make it seem like these short bursts. I think they could be 9 minutes long,
The first side had a couple of longer tracks on it, and had, I guess, more of a Celtic Frost influence, maybe more of a Discharge influence, and yeah, I mean, you can see that because they originally came from the kind of the anarcho-punk scene, and if you hear the really, really early Napalm Death recordings, it was essentially a punk band, albeit a really extreme one, And certainly the second side of Scum has more of the real, the really fast blasting on it, and more of the shorter tracks that they became known for, which I guess, when the band kind of seeped into the mainstream consciousness, that was kind of treated as a highly amusing thing by certain people, that they had songs that were only 30 seconds long and they were incredibly fast, but actually with those, obviously as the band progressed, their songs became longer anyway. But that kind of created the template for grindcore, you know, as a style of music, you know, something that's quite distinct from death metal, and it was that, you know, the coming together of the punk sound and I guess thrash and death metal influences as well, that made it so exciting, because it was something completely new. It wasn't, you know, there were bands around that were playing fast before Napalm Death, but I don't think anyone had played as fast as they played, you know. And if you listen around today, a lot of the bands that are around today, you know, Dillinger Escape Plan and you know, a lot of the kind of technical mathcore bands that are around at the moment, none of that would exist without what Napalm, you know, without the blast beat, which is something that, although it probably had been done before Napalm Death, they kind of cemented the sound, you know, set it in stone, so that you know, that's why they're considered the undisputed, you know, kings of grindcore.
If we can find some lights. There we go. This is the old grey room. Not a lot changed, probably amplification, different drums. But it's as I remember, it's still got that smell, still got that studio smell. But the B-side, as I say, on the A-side, we never used Ritch Bitch to rehearse in. This we would use from Enslavement to Obliteration onwards. And if you have a look on the cover, back of the cover of From Enslavement to Obliteration, you'll see a few pictures that were tucked in here. Yeah, it definitely brings back some memories. Desperate to get these blast beats. You know, I talked about the pedal as well.
Have you still got that original pedal?
No, I haven't. I don't even own a drum kit these days. I own a pair of drumsticks and a tuning key. £10 an hour, so £30, we'd be like, shit, we can't afford £30, you know what I mean? So, you know, we used to muster up, you know, between us a few quid here and there, and that'd pay for like 3 hours, because that's all we used to have, 3 hours. Prior to that, 1998 was the last time I actually performed behind a drum kit.
Does it feel weird being?
Yes, very weird. But I guess sort of like riding a bike, just a little bit rusty.
So you're going to talk us through the blast beat and give us a quick demo, yeah?
I'll try my best. Okay.
What's what with this blast beat, Mick?
Okay, for the blast beat, as I said, very simple beat, the hardcore beat, the Chaos UK beat, the Disorder beat, which really was kick, snare, and with the kick you're hitting the cymbal, so if we wanted to do it slow, then we've got that. For me, as I said, I wanted to play it faster, and the faster the better, and I had a little way of doing it with the ride and the crash, so I was sort of alternating between the two. So you've got that's as best as I can do it. I need a bit of practice again.
I think some of the songs, particularly on the first side, are very much grounded in kind of the idea of sort of globalisation and global politics. And then I think there's a sort of slight shift within the record as it goes on, where I think it becomes much more about, or much more nihilistic perhaps, and much more about kind of more abstract idea of the sort of fate of humanity. I think it becomes much more nihilistic. I think there's a sort of glimmer of hope that kind of gets wrung out of things as it kind of goes through the record. But I certainly think it's probably, as a historical document and as a reflection on the situation now, I think it's still very interesting. And I think what's really important as well is to remember that this was something that I don't think it was like something that was really calculated to sort of sound like it did. I think it just came as a reaction and a progression, and it grew. I mean, you know, the band were very young as well, so I don't think there was any kind of like, there certainly wasn't an idea of like manufacturing something that people would like to listen to in 20 years' time. I don't think that was even a possibility. I think they just did it, you know, and that was how it came out sounding.
It had its ups and downs, I guess. Napalm, I've got to speak for Jesse, bless, he's not with us no more, Mitch and Shane. They were drinking monsters, and they'd drink all night, whether it be on the tour bus or in the venue and then on the tour bus. They did not stop. They'd go out on the town, come back late night, and I knew, Mick, you're not going to get no sleep till they've come back. Then they're going to continue drinking. The music's going to be on, back and forth to the toilet. You've got to wait until 9 o'clock until the door finally closes and they're in their bunk, and then you might be able to get a little bit of sleep. So, the best part of it was getting on that stage and doing what you love doing most, and that's the music, and just having total fun and hopefully entertaining an audience.
Cool.
Regrets? No. I'm proud of every record that I recorded with Napalm. I'm proud of every gig that I performed with Napalm, with those guys, with all the different lineup changes, all the different members. It was an honour, and it's part of my life. It's history. It's then, and they are still now. Me and Barney, if you want to call it a fetish, had a little thing for kicking venue doors down, and as many as possible. Basically, we turn up to a venue, a pair of little kids, and get the sound check done. Then it'd be like, found a door, let's go and do it. You know, what the shit that's
Exterior
that about?
doors or interior?
Interior, exit, didn't matter. It was like, we've got to do a door, or as many doors as possible. Just.
But then you pay for them.
But then we pay, but we'd accept the payment. It wasn't like we'd make a fuss about, no, we're not paying for it. It'd be like, we knew we've done the damage, we've got to pay for it. Until doing one show at Coventry University, we'd kicked too many doors down. And the funniest was, the security guy was waiting for us behind the last door that we ended up kicking. They must have been waiting. They're in there, they're in there. So they waited, all of a sudden we come charging through the door. It come down, the whole panelling came down, everything. Right, got you, get out. I'm in the band, I'm playing, don't care, get out. And we had to talk ourselves back to get into the car. We accepted, yeah, we did it, we'll pay for it. Yes, you've done 5 doors tonight, you'll never play in here again. So, oh, sorry, we'll pay for it. But we got a bit of a bad name. Yeah, it used to come back like, you can play, no door kicking tonight, lads, it's giving us a bad name. That's it.
They don't get credit for being as revolutionary and you know, inventive as they were, you know. And also I always say that, you know, if you look at the history of heavy music in the UK, you know, first there was Black Sabbath, then Judas Priest, then Iron Maiden. Those 3 bands are, you know, obviously extremely important. And after them, the most important band ever to come out of this country is Napalm Death. And you know, they've influenced thousands of bands. You know, you can hear the influence of what they do in so much music that's around now. But I don't think anybody, you know, maybe only a couple of bands spring to mind that have ever really captured the energy and the aggression of the early Napalm Death stuff.
Metal magazines would write about grindcore bands like Napalm Death because they saw them as their sort of music, and punk zines would write about Napalm Death because they saw it as their music as well. It drew on 2 sets of fans, and that was quite important in its development, really, as well as the actual alternative crowd appreciated it for its political lyrics and the fact that it was new and fresh, and John Peel supported it. It was kind of a music that, it was a new style of music, but it actually appealed to a cross-section of people.
It pushed the boundaries, it started something. As much as you can hear influences on there, a mix of this, that and the other, we started something and we just pushed it to the next level, and I'm proud to have been a part of doing that.
I've got a really strange perspective on Scum, because I came to it after From Enslavement to Obliteration. I heard the second album, From Enslavement, first, and it was only after that I thought, hang on a minute, wow, this is incredible. I went back and discovered the first album and discovered the roots of what is now known as grindcore. And to me, I think the reason why it's actually become so crucial and so important is that it actually was pioneering. It took the spirit of the Sex Pistols a decade earlier and put it into the late 80s. And you've got to remember, the late 80s, we had thrash, we had extreme and underground metal, we had punk, etc. But nothing as confrontational, as dynamic as the way that Napalm Death were doing it. It really was a series of explosions. 28 tracks, and I think I'm right in saying only one over 3 minutes long, only another two over 2 minutes long, and these were short, sharp shocks that really changed the way every one of us thought about the general way and perspective of music. It was the first time, I believe, in a decade that British underground music, extreme music, had been as dynamic and as confrontational, and with hindsight, is massively influential.
The impact Napalm Death as a band had on earache was pretty immense, really. That's an understatement. I mean, as well as the Scum album being the biggest seller, and being the third release I did and being the biggest seller by miles, it sort of kick-started the whole underground extreme metal scene. All the projects, all the bands that the members formed after they quit Napalm Death, maybe, you know, like Mickey's Scorn project, Lee's Cathedral, Bill's Carcass, they all ended up being on earache. They were like the next wave of releases after Napalm Death. So out of maybe the first 20 odd releases that came out on earache, I think there's possibly at least half of them were Napalm Death or Napalm Death related, you know. So that's how much of an impact they had on the label. Mickey would be like, check out Morbid Angel. I saw Entombed supporting Napalm Death, so again that connection. I mean, they were such trailblazers. It's hard to overstate how much Napalm Death were the scene, and the flag bearers, the members when they were in the band caused the shockwave. But then when they left, they also formed other bands. You know, not quite as been as successful as Napalm Death, but they've they're up there, and that's their legacy at the end of the day. It's earache's catalogue and the legacy of the individual members.
Scum to me is what started, if you want to call it, my career, my musical path. It was a springboard to many other things, and something that I'm so happy to have been a part of as a member, as a songwriter. It's a bit of history, I think, and I believe, and very proud moment of my life, without a doubt, and respect to everybody that has given some time to that.